And Fred, I'm going to have the privilege of introducing you, guys and gals. We've got a special guest on tonight. In fact, Fred and I are both going to be visiting with you about something that I think you're going to find pretty interesting. But I'm going to let Fred and I talk about it, and he's going to actually start off the call tonight instead of me starting out and going over to him. And you guys all know Fred. Fred Kaufman's the owner of our company. He is the guy that is behind the idea of Basic Reset and the idea of what we do and how we help people. But he's amazingly also the guy that's behind some pretty neat ideas as far as helping you to build your business. A lot of people think Fred just is interested in doing product, and he is. But what you don't know is he's a heck of a marketer besides. So I'd like to introduce to you, it's my privilege to introduce to you a guy that's become my close friend, and he is the guy that we all listen to because he knows from where he speaks, the owner of this company, the CEO, the head guy, Mr. Fred Kaufman. Fred, you got the floor, my friend.
All right. Thank you, Randy. I appreciate you. And welcome, everybody, to the call. I appreciate that you've thought enough about what we're doing here at Basic Reset to give up your precious time to join us and learn more about what we're doing. Excuse me, Randy and I were talking earlier, and I don't know if you know this about me, but I have owned my own business my entire adult life. There's only been 3 times where I had a short stint of maybe a month or so where I worked for somebody else, but that was only because I was transitioning from one thing to another. And during that time, I've had a lot of education on business, just what they call street smarts. I hadn't had any business courses in college. My experiences really became my training ground. And one of the things that I was always wanting to learn is what I'm going to call the millionaire's secret. You know, the ambition when I was early on in my business career was to make $1 million, to be a millionaire. Well, most of you know that $1 million won't get you very far these days. That's especially if you want a nice house, that's going to be $350,000 to $500,000. If you want a really nice car, it's going to be $50,000 to $100,000. So when you're done, you've only got a few $100,000 left. So really today, we want to be multimillionaires. And it's still available to the average person. That's one thing great about this country, and even greater about network marketing, is that the only limits are what limits you place on yourself. One of the things that I learned as part of the Millionaire's Secret was how I was thinking. I didn't realize that my thoughts were behind the words that came out of my mouth. And I talk to a lot of people every day, and every so often somebody will call, and I hear all this negativity coming out of their mouth. And I can't help myself. I stop them, whether they're talking about their health or whether they're talking about their business, and I stop them when I hear all this negativity, and I'll say, well, part of your problem is what you're saying. And there's always this pause. And then the realization, I know that, but I can't help myself. Well, you can help yourself. You've got to get control of what you speak out of your mouth, because what you speak out of your mouth is going to shape your reality. It's going to shape your future. Early on, I think I was about 19 years old, and I read a book. You probably have heard of it, maybe not have read it, but you've probably heard of it, and it was called The Power of Positive Thinking. And that book changed my future because I realized that there was no reason for me to think of anything other than successful thoughts, positive thoughts, affirmations, some people call it now. But it's the same thing. you can think, you can choose to think whatever you will. You can think negative things. You can think positive things. You can think unbelievable things. It doesn't matter. It's all free. It's whatever you choose. I learned in that book that if I chose to think about positive things, think about things that might otherwise, or even to other people around me, seem unachievable, that it didn't matter. As long as I kept thinking it and then speaking it, then I had the opportunity to achieve unbelievable things. And another book that I read that really changed my life, and it became what I consider to be the millionaire's secret. And it was a book by Dale Carnegie called How to Win Friends and Influence People. Now that sounded silly to me at first. I was almost embarrassed to read it because I thought, well, I don't want to influence people. People have their own freedom. I don't want to influence people. But then I realized that I was influencing people whether I wanted to or not. And I was influencing everyone that I came in contact with. And one of the keys of this book that I'll never, ever forget, he said, the best conversationalist is the one who asks the best questions. Can you imagine meeting somebody for the first time and you're nervous because you want to make a good impression, you want people to like you, and you're thinking, how can I make them like me? I know I'll tell them all the great things I've accomplished. Well, guess what? They really don't care. In fact, the number one thing that people care about is themselves. Now, that sounds selfish, but it's really true of almost everyone. We want to talk about ourselves. We want other people to talk about us, hopefully in a positive way. But we want to, in a sense, brag about ourselves. And so it seems rather appropriate then that if you entertain a conversation with someone who you've just met for the first time, and they ask you questions about yourself, you're going to be more than willing to talk about yourself. And when they walk away from the conversation, even though you've said very little, they're going to walk away thinking to themselves, wow, that was really a great person. I really like that person. And they probably won't even realize that the reason behind that is because you allowed them to talk about themselves, talk about the things that they were interested in. Now, we sometimes presuppose that when you want someone to like you, that you need to tell them wonderful things about yourself. But in reality, most people don't even care. And so it wasn't too many, I guess it's been a couple of months now, that I heard a preacher on television, and it was a young guy, and he made a very profound statement. He said, people don't care what you know, they want to know that you care. And that ties in with what I just said, that the best conversationalist is the one who asks the best questions. So there's two people in a conversation, sometimes more, but the person who is the best at the art of conversation is the one who knows how to ask the best questions. And that brings us to the meat of the millionaire's secret, relationships. That's it. In a nutshell, that's it. Randy and I were talking on the phone earlier today, and we like to joke around about things, and I told him, I said, Randy, I think the one key to the success I've had in every business that I've ever owned is that I'm good at relationships. People tend to like me. And the reason that they like me is not because I'm such a likable guy, but I'm entertaining and I'm curious about other people. So he said, I'm the same way. And Randy, if you don't know, he's essentially owned his own business almost all of his adult life. And most of that adult life has been spent in network marketing. And one of the things that Randy and I have in common is relationships. I have not run across anybody yet who knows Randy and hasn't said something good about him. And if you've ever talked to Randy, he's one of those very, very likable guys. One of his gifts, if you will, is that he's a humorous guy. He likes having fun. And he's entertaining with his humor. If you are not part of the Freedom Group on Facebook, the Basic Reset Freedom Group, get with your sponsor and have them plug you in to the Freedom Group. And you'll be privileged to read some of Randy's writings. And one of those that's probably the most entertaining is the Fat Boy Report. Now, Randy's a very big-boned guy, and he talks about himself in a humorous way, and he calls it the Fat Boy Report, and he's always making jokes about people's weight, particularly his own. And it just has me, oh my gosh, I feel like sometimes I'm just going to have to drop down and roll around on the floor. I'm laughing so hard. Now, Randy, you told me that when you go places and meet new people, even if it's going out to the store or going to the gas station or wherever you are, you always have a good time interacting with people. I want to give you an opportunity to say a little bit about that before I go any further. Tell us about some of the opportunities you've had to just interact with somebody and what the result of that has been.
Well, Fred, I do that. I appreciate you asking about that because I'm often asked by people all the time, how do you find people to talk to? And my response to that is, quite frankly, I build, like Fred said, I build relationships with people. And building a relationship, oftentimes we think, well, gee, that's a long, drawn-out affair. And yes, it can be. But most of the time, you start out by building something called rapport. And that can be done in just a few minutes. That's just simply where you get on the same levels as the people. And what I do when I talk to people all the time is I try to bring up something about them because you heard Fred say it just a minute ago that people are really interested. For example, if you ask somebody a simple question like, what do you do for a living? I don't remember ever asking that of somebody and having them look at me and say, that's none of your business. They don't. They just open up and they'll tell you way more information than you even want to know sometimes. And the reason for that is because people love to talk about themselves. Well, when you do that, you're building a rapport with them because now they're thinking to themselves, wow, this person is interested in me. And that's what I do. I ask people simple questions like that, like, what do you do for a living? Or have you lived around here long? I noticed that maybe sometimes, in fact, I just did this the other day. I was in the grocery store, and there was a person looking at a new type of I want to say not Hispanic, but Mexican frozen dinner thing. And I don't normally buy that kind of stuff, but he was holding this, looking at this box, and he's really looking intensely. So I just walked up alongside of him, and I said, is that stuff any good? And he looked at me kind of funny. He said, well, I don't know. He says, I'm just reading about it. Oh, I said, you've never had it before? And he said, no. He said, it's a brand new thing. He said, and I saw it advertised on TV, and I'm reading about it. And I said, oh. I said, it kind of looks like it might be good. I said, what does it say there? And he looks at me kind of funny, and he says, well, do you want to read it? And I said, well, no. I said, I just thought maybe you'd read far enough along where we both could buy a box. And he laughed, and he got along at any rate. So I built a little bit of rapport with him in a real short period of time just by asking him what he was looking at or saying something like, that looks good. Now, what's interesting about that is if I would have wanted to, I could have continued on a little bit more with this gentleman, and I know that I probably could have gotten into a situation where maybe we could have visited about what he did for a living or something like that, because it's amazing what people will do when you just start talking to them. And so that's what I do. I just constantly talk to people about themselves, or I bring up interesting facts. I think you all have heard me tell the story about when I put gas in my vehicle. I very seldom, unless I'm in a hurry, I very seldom put my card in the pump. I always go into the station and tell them I would like to have X number gallons or X number of dollars worth of gas on pump so-and-so. And the reason I do that is because I can't talk to a gas pump, but I can talk to somebody that's behind the till in the store. And if I go in there and he's extremely busy or she's extremely busy, it's no big deal. I just take care of business and leave. But if oftentimes they're not busy, and so I just say, look, I like to have such on pump, and then I go outside, put the gas in, and then I always go back in again. And I'll say, doggone it, I forgot to buy gum or whatever it was that I think that I want to have. And that's when I hold a conversation with them. And I ask really crazy things sometimes. Like the one time I asked a guy, I just said, I'm just curious. I said, how does it feel to be a moving target? And he looked at me kind of funny. He said, what do you mean? And I said, well, you never know. I said, I'm a nice guy, but we never know who the next person is coming in that door. And I said, you're working behind the till here. And I said, with all this crazy stuff going on in this world, I said, don't you ever feel like you're kind of a moving target? And he said, well, yeah. He says, I never really thought about that. But he says, yeah. He says, I guess I am. And I said, well, I'm just curious. I said, if I could show you a way to make the kind of money that you're making here, which I'm sure is good pay. Now, I know it's not good pay, but I say that anyway, which I'm sure is good pay, and you could do it from the safety of your own home, is that something that maybe you'd like to listen to or hear about? And he said, yeah, I sure would. Well, I did. I ended up giving him information. He went to the website. He looked at the video. Now, did this guy join us? No, he didn't, because not everybody joins. But guess what? Most of them do. But he was willing to take a look simply because I made a statement to him. So in learning how to talk to people, it's simply building relationships. Fred and I were talking today about something that we both end up doing, and we make some funny statements about things that get people to remember who you are. And Fred does one when he goes to Chick-fil-A that I thought was pretty cool. Tell him that story, Fred, what you do at Chick-fil-A, and the people know you now because you do this.
Well, that's right. And one of the things I do, let's say I go into Walmart, and those people are trained at the cash registers to say, hello, how are you? And they say it almost robotically. And oftentimes I'll be there when it's busy, and the person in front of me has finished checking out, and this attendant is grabbing my stuff and quickly scanning it, and I'll look at him right in the eye and I'll say, fine, thank you, how are you? And it always gets a laugh. It makes them pause, and they look up and they seem a little startled, and they smile and they say, oh, I'm sorry, how are you? And I'll say, I already covered that, how are you? The reason I do that is because I'm a jokester. I love to have fun, and I love to have fun with other people. And they always remember me. So if I come to a favorite place to shop, 9 times out of 10, there's going to be people in there that know who I am. And one of my favorites is when occasionally we'll go to a place called Chick-fil-A. I don't know if you have those around where you're at, but either way, they have wonderful chicken sandwiches. And sometimes when we're in a big hurry and haven't had time to cook, my wife and I will go in there, and I just love their ice cream. And Kim only lets me get ice cream there if it's a weekend. If it's during the week, I can go in there and get a chicken sandwich, but she won't let me get any ice cream. But when I go in there to get ice cream, I always say the same thing. Yes, and I'd like an ice cream cup with no hole in the middle. And they always laugh. And they look up at me and they say, no hole in the middle. I say, yeah, sometimes when it swirls around it going into the cup, it just leaves a big hole in the middle. I said, no hole in the middle. Well, now when I go into Chick-fil-A, all of the people who are the regulars who have worked there for a while, they all know who I am. They may not know my name, but they know I'm no hole in the middle. And sometimes they'll even tell other people. Like, for example, this one girl, when she's working the drive up and she sees somebody waiting on me, I always say hi to her, and she says hi back. But when she sees them walk over to the ice cream machine with my cup, she smiles and she leans over and she says, now remember, no hole in the middle. It's just the funniest thing. The manager in there that is in charge of training people, not the top manager, the first interaction we had with her was one day my wife and I were sitting there, and my wife noticed her interacting with a new employee, and she made a comment to me. She said, she's a very good trainer. Even though she had to scold that guy, she did it in a very nice way. And so I went up there to get my ice cream, and she walked by, and I said, hi. And she stopped, and she said, hi. And I said, I just wanted to tell you, my wife and I were talking, and we were discussing you training that other individual. And she looked at me, her eyes kind of got big, and I said, my wife commented that you're a very good trainer. And she said, nobody's ever said that to me before. Now, let me just give you a little hint. Do you think that girl remembers me? You better believe she does. Nobody has ever said that to her before. How much did that cost me? Nothing. How much influence did it have? A huge, huge amount of influence. So the point that Randy and I are trying to make is it's about relationships. Now, what if you are you've joined our company and you're trying to think of what is the best way for me to advertise my business? Well, a lot of people are on Facebook, and we have the privilege of working with a guy named George Madu, and he has a magazine called the Network Marketing Magazine. If you haven't joined that, you can join for free. There's also a paid membership, but you can get a mountain of information on how to build your business from experts in network marketing for free. When you get the paid membership, you get a 2-year membership for the price of one, but you also get access to this guy, Max Steingart, and he has a program called Endless Free Leads. He has done 2 seminars, and Randy and I have sat in on those seminars, and one of the things he talks about is how to get endless free leads on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and he tells you step by step how to do that. He'll go into even more detail if you get his system, which is normally $397, and it's free when you sign up for this 2-year membership to the Network Marketing Magazine. And he gives away a lot of tips about what he's going to teach you in that system. And guess what? He doesn't say to go on Facebook and have an ad with all of the bullet points of the benefits of your products. He doesn't say to go on there and place an ad with all the bullet points of the benefits of joining your company. He says nothing about that. Isn't that surprising? What he does say is it's all about relationships. And he teaches you step by step how to interact with people, even total strangers, gives you scripts as to what to say. But it's all based on what Randy and I have been discussing here tonight. It's about establishing relationships, and it's very easy to do. You're probably already doing it and don't even realize it. One of the other things Randy and I were talking about is when you are in public, when you're interacting with other business people, try to imagine the worst thing that could possibly happen is that they have to deal with complaints. So you never want to be that person. Even if you have a complaint, you want to do it in a way that's soothing. So you can say things like, you know what, I'm really dissatisfied. I want my money back and I'll never shop here again. Or you can say something like, you know what, you probably don't get many complaints. And they'll probably say something like, well, we get enough. Well, I know it must be the worst thing that you have to do is to deal with complaints. Yeah, I hate dealing with complaints. Yeah, I know. I'm with you. I wouldn't want your job for any amount of money. But I wanted to bring something to your attention so that you could improve your business and possibly have less complaints. Oh, yes, you see, the product that I bought isn't satisfactory. And I was wondering if I could give that back to you and get credit for purchasing something else. I don't even want my money back because I like shopping here, but I would like to get my money to put towards purchasing something else. Now, I don't want to cause a problem. Would that be okay with you? Well, certainly it would. Here, let me just help you with that. You see the difference? Now, it is all about the relationship. Even people that have nasty jobs would rather deal with people that understand that it's about the relationship. Even if you plan on never shopping at that store ever again, you don't know, but one day you might be sitting down in church and see that same person sitting across the aisle from you. Wouldn't it be better to have had a good relationship with that person than a bad one? And this comes up over and over and over. This is not only this one principle, relationships, building relationships. That is not going to only benefit you with building your basic reset business. That's going to extend into every aspect of your life. When my first business was a gas station business. I know that sounds kind of hard to believe, but it was. And we were known all throughout the town as having the best service of any gas station in the whole town. This was back in the early 70s. It was back when we still had full-service gas stations. And our guys were required to be clean-cut. They could never carry a dirty rag hanging out of their pocket. They always had to have their hands washed. They couldn't have greasy hands. And when a customer pulled up on the drive, they had to run. They were required to run out to that car. If there were two attendants and neither one of them were busy when that car pulled in, they both were required to go out there. They didn't take turns. And when they went out there, it was all about service. We not only washed the windshield, we washed every window. And then we asked not only to check your oil, but to check your tires. People couldn't believe it. People would come from all over town. We had customers that came from other small towns outside of our city that would drive all the way across town to come to our gas station because they loved the service. And they loved the fact that I was all about relationships. So people loved to bring their car to me and get it worked on. The meanest guy at the high school that was right nearby was the basketball coach, and he had a reputation for being a mean and nasty guy. He drove past our gas station twice a day, to school and back, and he did that for a year before he stopped in. He said, I just wanted to check you out before I trust you with my car. When we finally decided to go on to some other kind of business, he came to me, and this tough, mean, rough guy literally had tears coming down his face. And he said, what am I going to do? And I was so touched by that. Why did he cry? Because of the relationship that I had with him. It's not because we had the best service or the best gas or the best mechanics. It was about the relationship that I had established with him. There was a point in time when there were people saying, Fred, you know, the mayor is up for re-election. You ought to run for mayor. Why would people say that? It's because they liked me. Was I such a great, likable guy? No. but I built relationships. Randy, I tell you what, people need to get this point, that it's not about the benefits of your product. It's not about who can have the most clever ad. It's about who can build the best relationship. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I do. Because let's face it, everybody that's listening to this, especially those of you that are out there that have been in the industry for some time, you know as well as I do that what we're talking about is exactly the right truth. It's when you build a relationship. As a matter of fact, let me just give you an example. When you have people that maybe have been in the business for a while, maybe you've been with some other companies, and you have people that were with you in those other companies, and they're here with you in this company. And they followed you here. Now, initially they maybe didn't follow you here because they even heard about our products, or maybe they didn't even follow you here because they heard about our marketing plan or anything like that. They may have followed you here just because you were here. And oftentimes, to be honest with you, that is the case because they have had a relationship with you and they've come to know and trust you, and they figure, well, if you're over here doing this, then there's got to be something to this, and I need to be there too. So this relationship thing is extremely important because really, in all reality, folks, that's what this business is all about. It's all about your relationship. That's why it's called network marketing, because you're networking with a whole bunch of other people, and you have fun, and it's a lot of fun, and so you just relaxed and you talk with people and you visit with them and you ask them questions. I did a video this morning where Fred brought it up talking about complainers. My tip for the day today dealt with that, and also my wherever the heck I'm at video, or what used to be called drive time videos that I did, I dealt with the same thing. When you think about it, complainers are gold mines, because most of the time when people are complaining about something, and I'm not talking about the person coming into the store like Fred was using as an example that's complaining about a product that doesn't work or something, or that they're not satisfied with. I'm talking about the people that in your normal everyday life that you run into, that maybe it's at your job or wherever it is, that they're always complaining about something. Maybe they're complaining about the weather. Maybe they're complaining about the fact that they had to get up and drive in bumper-to-bumper traffic or whatever it is. But if you'll listen to those people, you know what they're doing. They're telling you what their problems are. They're telling you the things they're upset with. And in network marketing, what is really our main goal? It is to find out what the problems are that people have and present them with a solution. And when you do that, now you have moved from selling to helping. And the minute that you move from selling to helping, people are then genuinely interested because they want to be helped. When somebody says that they have a problem and the problem goes like this, I just hate it. And I hate it when it starts, and they change that time back, and you wake up in the morning and it's, you got to get up at 5 or 6 o'clock, maybe sometimes before that, and it's dark, and the whole time you're driving to work, it's in the winter time and the time's changed and it's still dark, and when you get off work, you come home and it's dark when you're walking out to your car, and it's dark by the time you get home. And they complain about that. I mean, that's a legitimate complaint, because in the daytime when the sun is shining and it's nice, where are they? They're inside of a building working. So they go there in the dark, and they come home in the dark. So what are they telling you? They're saying, boy, if I could just do anything else that would replace this income, I would do it in a heartbeat, where I could get up when I wanted to, be outside in the sunshine when the sun's shining, or be out. At least I could look through a window and see the sunshine, and even if it's cold out. And I don't have to be driving in traffic in cold, miserable weather, and it's dark. And you've got an opportunity to present something to them that can help them with that problem. So complainers are walking gold mines if you'll just listen to what they say. Now, you can't help everyone. Some people are just natural complainers. They complain about $1 million if they had it. But for the most part, people really do complain because they're not satisfied with something in their life. They're not happy. And if you can present a solution to them, that may change that for them, they'll genuinely interested. They'll be interested. They'll have a genuine. They'll want to do business with you, and you build a relationship with them. It's called rapport. It just takes a few seconds to build, and all you got to do is show interest in them. But be genuine. Don't show interest in people just because you want to make the sale. Because guess what? As quickly as they'll accept you, if you're really genuinely interested in them, if you're just trying to do it to make a sale, that's written all over your face. They'll see it, and they'll reject you just as fast as they would if you walked up to them and said, hey, I'm selling this bottle of pills. Would you like to buy some? But if you're genuinely interested in them, and that's the way you really should be in life anyway, then you're going to find out that people will become genuinely interested in you. And when that happens, you've built rapport, you've built a relationship, and you'd be surprised what people will do. In fact, sometimes all you got to do to say to people is a simple word like, can you help me? And I don't know if you ever tried that or not, but the next time you went into somebody, say, could you help me? Do you know that we as human beings have a natural instinct in us to help? You know, if somebody's driving along and you need directions and you see somebody by the street, they're a complete stranger, they don't know you from Adam, but if you stop and roll down your window and say, could you help me? I'm looking for such and such a place. 99.9% of them will give directions and help you.
Randy, I want to...
Go ahead. Jump in, Fred.
I wanted to tell a little story about my neighbor. I told you about him. His name is Travis. He's a truck driver. In fact, he actually owns his, I don't know how many, but he owns several trucks. And he lives next door in the apartment building next door, and I rarely ever see him because he's usually home maybe 1 or 2 days on the weekend. But we've lived next door to each other for probably 4 or 5 years. And the first time I ever talked with him, he had a Corvette. And I saw him out there, and I went over and started talking to him about his Corvette. Well, you can understand from what we've been discussing so far, he liked me. I never talked about myself. I talked about him and his Corvette. What do you do? And I learned a lot about him. Well, out of that relationship, we have, in this 4 or 5 years, maybe even longer than that, we've only gotten together one time. It was when his wife's father died. And we went to the funeral, and they had a meal after the funeral at the church. That's the only time we've ever been anywhere, done anything with him and his wife in all of these years. But this is what you're going to find interesting. Do you know that hardly a week ever goes by in all of those years that he hasn't called me on the phone and said, hey, Fred, this is Travis. I didn't want nothing. I just called to see how you're doing and tell you I love you. Can you believe that? All these years, practically once every week, he calls me up from the road and he'll say, I don't want nothing. I just wanted to call and see how you're doing and tell you I love you. How many of you could believe that when he called me up and said, Fred, I'm out on the road, but I need to get a deposit into the bank, and it's over at my apartment. If you wouldn't mind going over there and getting it from my wife and taking it to the bank for me, I would really appreciate it. How many of you know that I dropped what I was doing to help him out? And how many of you believe that when I would go out of town and I'd need somebody to feed my cats, I could call him and know that he would be there, that he'd have my back? Yet we've never really hung out together. It's just been this slight interaction once in a great while when he happens to be coming in and out of his apartment and I happen to be coming in and out of my apartment. Very rare does that happen. But once a week, almost without fail, he calls me and just tells me, I just wanted to see how you're doing and tell you I love you. Start there. He did that for the longest time before he ever asked me for a favor. For the longest time. Now, how many of you talk to the people who are in your group, on your team? How many of you reach out to them and say to them, I didn't want anything. I just wanted to see how you're doing. Tell you I love you. It's not hard. And you can ask something like, is there anything I can do for you? Is there anything I can help you with? you're going to have people on your team that would follow you off a cliff because they really, really can believe that you care about them. And that's what relationship building is all about. When people know you care, they'll care what you know. It's just the opposite of what I said earlier. When people know you care, they'll care what you know. Randy, I tell you what, I am just completely speechless after all of these years of owning my own business to learn from the very outset that the millionaire's secret is relationships.
Well, you know, Fred, when we were talking about this very thing today, it came to my mind too, because I think of all the people that I know in the industry that are those, we always call them the big money earners or the millionaires in the business, or the ones that have been, they're mentors. We learn from them. They teach us all different kinds of things. Those are the people that, if you listen to what they say, they're practicing what we were talking about each and every day. They share with others in the form of asking how they can be of service to them. And the minute that you do that is the very minute that your life starts to change. Because, you see, it falls back into something else that we often refer to. You hear people say it all the time, and we call it the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And when you are really concerned and honestly start sharing with other people, and you start building relationships with them, believe me, you don't ever have to sell anything to anybody. People will come and buy it from you because they want it. They already know that they want it. Everybody wants something. And you always have to have something that they want. And what do you have that they want? Well, even if all of your products were horrible, there's something you have that they want, and that's called a way to make more money. But in the case of our company, where you have products that are wonderful, and you have prices that are reasonable, and you have a marketing plan that absolutely is astounding, then you have everything that they could ever want. All you have to do is have them ask you for it. And how do you do that? By doing what Fred says, and that's build a relationship. And Fred, we've gone on now for about 43 or 45 minutes, something like that. And I know that we try to keep the call smarter. But before we hang up tonight, I want to ask you one real quick question, because I think that it's something that people out there always want to know, and that's simply this. If you were out and about and you ran into I'm putting you on the spot now, buddy. If you ran into a complete stranger, just a complete stranger, you don't know him from Adam, but you knew that you wanted to talk to him about your business, about what you do for a living, about some way just to get a hint to him that maybe he might be willing to ask you a question or ask you, say, I want some more information. I'm going to put you on the spot. How would you do that?
That's really pretty easy. Do I have to give a short answer?
Well, I'll give you just a few minutes. A short answer would be 10 minutes, so okay, you can have a short answer.
You said it was a short question. Do I have to give a short answer? Yeah. No. In all seriousness, I probably wouldn't even say anything at that point in time. I would ask them for their phone number so we could stay in touch. But I would, at the very most, drop a hint as to what I'm doing. I probably wouldn't tell them exactly what it is I'm doing at that point, because then it's that same old thing. People will get the wrong idea, because if you say, oh, I'm a networker, I do network marketing, I have my own home-based business, and I'm with this great company, and we have these great health products, and oh my gosh, we're just changing people's lives. They start smelling a rat. They start smelling the sales pitch. And so you want to avoid that as much as possible. So I would maybe say something like, Well, I've always owned my own business. Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah, I've always owned my own business. I wouldn't have it any other way. I have a lot of freedom to do what I want, work when I want, work with who I want. Oh, really? Well, what is it that you do? Well, look, I don't really have time to get into all that right now. Why don't you give me your phone number and I'll get back with you and we'll talk about it. Oh, sure. That's usually how it goes. Now, I've learned my lesson because I have kind of a teacher mentality. I want to educate people. And I used to just go on and on and on telling people all the details I thought I could squeeze in the time that they would give me. And I was not successful. It just didn't matter how much I talked, how many details I gave them. It just didn't seem to matter. But I found out a very interesting thing. The less information I gave to people, the more they were curious to know more. So that was a great lesson to me. So my advice would be the less you tell them, the better off you're going to be. In fact, you'll know that you're on the right track if you get them to ask questions because you've told them just enough to make them curious and they want to know more. But if you tell them everything, you'll give them just enough information that they think that they know what you're all about and they can say no. So that's my advice, and it's been working out pretty well.
Well, and it does work out well. And, folks, if you listen to, and I'm going to encourage you when this call's over because we're going to be posting it in the Freedom Room, and Fred will send it out in an email to you. But listen to it again because, you might just think, well, gosh, this is two fellows talking. Well, you know something? We're talking about things that if you'll just apply them in your life. You see, I wake up in the morning and I never worry about who I'm going to talk to. I wake up in the morning and I never worry about how my life's going to go that day. And the reason for that is because of the confidence that I have in just visiting with people. Everybody knows how to visit with people. No matter who you are, you know how to do it because you do it all the time. You visit with your friends. You've even visited with strangers, if you really think back on it, when you think, gee, I could never talk to a stranger. But that's not true. You've done it in your life many times. Just think back on it, and you'll remember some of those times. And that's what it's all about, because in the course of that conversation is when you're going to find out that you're able to ask something. There's always an opening. If you'll just listen, God gave you 2 ears. That's so you listen twice as much because you only have one mouth and you talk. If you'll just listen, people will tell you exactly what you need to know to present your business or your opportunity to them in such a way that they ask you for more information. Just listen to what they say, and you're going to find out that you'll be able to say something that will make them. For example, somebody might be complaining about, boy, I just hate these long hours at work. And you could say a simple statement like, hey, you know something I just found out? That stay-at-home mom, and let's just say it's women talking. You can say, I just found out that the stay-at-home moms are making more money part-time than their husbands are working full-time. Now, if you say that in a group of people, there's going to be somebody in that group that's going to say, well, how does that work? What's that all about? I just found out how Uncle Sam will pay you $100 to $200 a month to own your own business. Well, how does that all work? How does that work out? Believe me, folks, there's always a way to talk to people. So listen, take this call. Well, share it with your...
Randy,
with your,
we've got one piece of unfinished business, our free book winners.
Oh, I almost forgot about that. Okay, let's go here. I've got some numbers. So here's how this works. We got books to give away, and I'm going to call out 3 phone numbers. Now, when we're done with the call, we'll be opening up the line. If you hear your phone number called, stay on the line. Do not hang up when the call is over because we need to verify your information. The first number is 407-818-9159. That's 407-818-9159. The second number is 226-919-5826. 5028. That's 226-919-5028. And the last number is 772-584-7084. So if you have those numbers, 407-818-9159, 226-919-5028, and 772-584-7084. Stay on the line. I'm going to open up the call, and we will verify your information. I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. And remember that next Thursday night we're going to have another one of these calls, and we're going to be talking about something different that will help you build your business. Thank you, everybody. Good night.